Today's online class we'll be working through some the marketing and contracts and working with some grain sales and associating those with the contracts that have been set up. The project that I'm using is just one of our demo projects that we have here. So it's got some older data in it, it's got some newer data in it, it's kind of got a combination of everything there. Should serve us well for our demonstration purposes here today. The marketing section of the program is more just of a place for you to go in and track and manage your contracts that you may have set up, may need to set up, or may want to track with your data. A lot of folks over the years have kept those in a spreadsheet or and maybe in another program or on paper or whatever. We just wanted to give you a place right within the program to be able to track that. And then as we're making sales, we can associate those sales with those contracts that have been set up. Some of the numbers here we're using today obviously aren't going to be spot on, but we're going to do our best to give you at least some decent examples of how the process works. I guess to start off with, to get access to that marketing section, contracts section of the program, we're going to go to our accounting menu, to income, sales, and deposits, and then down to our harvested crop sales contracts. When we first bring that up, you'll see in this case we've got some older contracts in the program. The contracts can be used to track any type of product that you may be setting up contracts for. You'll see here we've got examples for both, actually for corn, cotton, and soybeans. We can set up the types of contracts to match whatever you might need, whether that be a flat contract, a hedge to arrive, a delayed price, a futures contract. You could even track in there. You lock in some prices on grain. You could enter that in here as well. So the program is pretty flexible in what it does allow you to do, and how it allows you to set things up. We'll talk a little bit here at the start about the section, the selection filter at the top. What that is used for is once you get some contracts started and set up within the program, you can use the drop-down list here to narrow down what shows up in the main part of the screen. So for example, if we go in here and choose 2010, and actually let's clear the filter and let's go to 2010 as our start year, and we'll choose 2010 as our end year. You'll notice that all of our contracts go away because they're all in that 2011 contract year. If we open that back up and leave those blank, we can go in and narrow by commodity. That'll show us just our corn, show just our cotton, just our soybeans, whatever situation we want to do. We can also narrow by vendor. So if we want to go in and say, show us just our contracts that we have with ADM, we can do that as well. The type, it'll bring up the list of any of the types that we have set up. So if I just want to see my delayed price, if I want to see my hedge to arrive, my basis contracts, my flat contracts, whatever the case might be in that situation. We can also narrow it down to say, show me all of my open contracts, show me all of my just delivered contracts, ones that I've maybe marked as filled. So we've got those options. We can always hit the clear filter button to clear all of that out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch this over to 2015. So we can start with a blank screen here, similar to what you would have when you're first opening it up and starting to set up. Actually, let's change this to 2014. We're going to set up some examples. Some of our examples are going to be some contracts that may have been for our 2014 crop that we probably would have entered in before harvest and those kind of things, but they still may be some contracts out there that we need to fill. So the first step in creating and setting up contracts is we have to go to this Edit Crops and Production button up in the top right-hand corner. Once we get into the new crops and production, it'll show us a drop-down list for the ones that we have set up already, or we can leave that set to new, which is what we'll do here in this case. And we'll say, let's go ahead and bring up our 2014 soybeans. Don't have 2014 in our list, so let's go ahead and add that. So we'll go in here and pick up 2014, and we'll add soybeans. So this will be our crop enterprise. And you'll see, actually in this case, whoops, does it already exist? There it is. Just didn't have an account associated with it. So now we should have our 2014 soybeans there. As we're setting up our crops in production, there's two separate ways we can enter that or get that basic information set up. If we know how many acres of soybeans we had in 2014, we can go in and just punch that in. Maybe we had 1,500 acres of soybeans, and our average yield per acre on that was, let's say, 63 bushel to the acre. That gave us 94,500 bushels of soybeans that we have in production. If we don't know what the area planted is, and we know our yield is, but we know our total production, maybe we know we had 98,000 bushel, the program will back figure our yield per acre. So you don't have to know all three pieces of information. If you know two of the three, the program will back figure the other. The other option we've got here, let's talk about the bottom line here, and then we can also put in an estimated sales price. That's just going to give the program a place to start when it starts thinking about, starts looking at values and those kind of things. And we'll say our estimated was $11 a bushel. So that's one way of setting up a crop enterprise. The other option, if we go in and let's pick up our 2015 crop, which we don't have set up in here yet either. So we'll pick up 2015 soybeans. We've got these two buttons here for Get Actual. What that will allow us to do, if I hit the Get Actual button, it's going to bring up how many ever acres we've got associated with enterprises for 2015. So we've actually got 47.5 acres of soybeans that we have set up for 2015 at this point. Just another option, another resource that you can use to come up with your acreage, so you don't have to manually add those numbers up if you've went through and where those enterprises are set up, in case we haven't covered that yet. If we go into a client, our farm, and a field, if we right-click on that field, we can choose New Crop Enterprise. And maybe this field, we're going to say it's going to be 2015 corn. So let's corn 2015. So there's our 2015 corn. It picks up the acreage then from our field, our tillable acreage on our field. And once we hit OK, now that's been added into our enterprises for that field. If we go back to our harvested crop and sales contracts, we go back into our add edit. If we pick up our 2015 corn, which we need to set up as a new, and now we hit our Get Actual, it picks up that we've got a total of 170.5 acres of corn set up at this point. We can always override that number, so if we know we really have 1,700.5 acres of corn, our projected yield on the 2015 crop is going to be 200 bushel to the acre, and our estimated price is $4.50 a bushel. Once we have those basics set up, we've given the program a basis to know how much or how many bushels of contracts we can set up for a given crop. That's primarily what we're doing with this Edit Crops in Production. We're going in there to give the program an estimated number of bushels that we have, so it knows how many bushels that we can set up contracts for. The program then will have the ability to figure out what percentage of our crop that we have is set up, how many bushels or what percentage of our crop is contracted versus which part is just available for sale in general there. To start setting up actual contracts, we just go to our Add button here at the bottom. And this is where we're going to be able to choose our vendor that we've got the contract set up with. So maybe we've got a contract set up here with Bunge at Waterloo. And our crops of production, from our drop-down list, you'll see all of the different crops that we set up here in that top right-hand corner. So for example, if this is a 2015 corn contract, we can choose 2015 corn. It shows us there that we've got a total estimated production of 340,000 bushel. The description, most folks are going to put in what the contract number is in the description. So I'm just going to come up with a contract number here. And then under our type, we've got our basic ones that we've already had in the program or that we've set up as we've gone forward. So whether that's a basis, a delay, delayed price, or a hedge to arrive, flat contract, or maybe we want to add a new contract type here. Let's just go ahead and set it up here as a futures contract. So we've added futures contract to our type. You see, the program will show us what percentage of our crop, of our estimated 2015 crop, we have contracted at this point. And at this point, we have 0% contracted. And now we're going to fill in as many boxes that are applicable here in the center. So we're going to fill in our futures price, and maybe our futures price on this is $5.50, and our basis is 41 cents, and our quantity that we're contracting here is 10,000 bushel. We can fill in a futures date if we have a futures date. Maybe this is a December 31 futures contract. If we have a basis date that would be applicable, we could definitely fill that in as well. Then we could enter in our start date. Basically, this is our start date as far as the delivery info. So maybe that has to be delivered between 12/1 and 12/31. We can put our status as open. Now that's going to add our contract into our list of contracts that we have. We can go at that point if we want to go into our reports. And let's go down and look at just our 2015 that we have. So I went ahead and checked the box for 2015. So it's picking up all of our 2015 contracts that we might have. And if I click on our print button here, it gives us an example, or gives us our top here, our top line is our information that we've entered in our total crops and production, edit crops and production at the top. And then it's got each of our different contracts listed. In this case, we've got just our one contract, which is 2.9, almost 3% of our estimated production. It's got our price, our basis, and then our total amount for that contract. At the bottom, as we continue to add additional contracts, it's going to continue to add up the total amount that's contracted, and then it'll give us a total amount that's unsold, or amount that we don't have under contract at that point. So that's one of the reports that we have that we can look at as we're going along, just to verify that we're getting the information entered in correctly. Go ahead and enter in a couple other types of contracts here. So we've got one with ADM here. Again, this will be our 2015 corn crop. And we'll put in an ADM number here. And we're going to put this as a basis contract this time. And our basis, our futures price on that is going to be $5.35. Oh, sorry, let's make that $5.85. And our basis is negative 50 cents. And maybe this again is a 10,000 bushel contract. Our futures date, let's make our futures date 12/1, and our basis date is 10/9 on this contract. We can fill in the start date if we would like. Don't have to if we don't want to. As far as the delivery info, maybe it's 12/1. Again to 12/31, and our status is an open contract. Continue through that same process. You could enter in, if you wanted to enter in just a delayed price or a flat price contract, you certainly could do that as well. So under our vendor, maybe our vendor this time is the East Central Co-op, and again we'll pick our 2015 corn. And let's call this And we'll put this in as just a flat type of contract that we've got it in, and we went ahead and we've locked in at $5.45. We have no basis on this one, and maybe we went ahead and locked in 50,000 bushel at that price for September delivery. We can always hit our calendar, and if we want to bring up the calendar, we can go in and put that in as well. So now if we go to, again, we go back to our reports, and we do our or maybe this time we just want to see just 2015 corn, which is all we've got entered in at this point. And we bring up the preview. Now we're showing all 3 contracts that we've got in there broken down by type of contract. Our total amount contracted, our total percent contracted, and then it's going to give us a total amount of what we have contracted plus what we had estimated at just the flat 450 a bushel, giving us a grand total of our corn sale estimate for this year. So that's how we basically go through and set up the contracts. The next part of that process would be allocating, as we're doing our sales, we can allocate those sales, delivery of that grain, to take it out of our inventory. We can allocate that or put that towards those contracts. So when we go into our income, sales, and deposit, and we actually do a record income or sale, for example, if we choose ADM from our list here, and we're going to actually sell some old crop here, so we'll go in and pick our 2011 soybeans, and we're going to go ahead and finish off the rest of that soybean sale there. And again, these are just some fictitious numbers here that I'm entering in just to go through the process. And now once we've got our sale entered in, what we actually delivered for, we can actually go into our contracts button here. You'll see the program will narrow it down automatically to our crop year and our vendor. And we can choose whichever contract that belongs to and hit OK. That brings our contract back, and we can fill in our quantity here. In this case, just that balance of that grain that we had to sell, so that 245 bushels. In the bottom part, we'll go ahead and just deposit that into our checking account and record that transaction and done. Now if we go back to our reports, oops, I'm going to go back to income, sales, and deposits, back into our contracts, and now we look at our reports. If we look at that, there's our contract for our soybeans that we just made our delivery on. You'll see there that it shows that 245 bushels as far as that being delivered. Other reports that we have as far as contracts are concerned, we can go in and look at just and see what's been delivered. We want to look at the 2011 crop year. Maybe we just want to do 2011 soybeans even. We can go ahead and select it, and it's going to show all of our contracts that we have, when our bushels were delivered on those, what quantity's been delivered, what quantity is undelivered. So we have that type of report that we can look at as well. The other contract report that we have is our delivery entries, and it's going to give us just a break it down by vendor then of when we were delivered made those different deliveries on that crop year. So for our 2011 soybeans, it shows both of our vendors that we had contracts with, what the contracts were, when those were made, and then how much is left still to be delivered. Or no, that just gives us our total amount delivered on our contracts. It doesn't show the percentages or anything. As far as contracts, I mean, like I said, it doesn't get, I mean, there's not a lot of detail there. There's no way to go out and pull markets off, market information off of the web, anything along those lines. The primary function is to give you the ability to go in and track those contracts, so you can put in what's been entered, what's been delivered, and then mark those sales so that they get put to those appropriate contracts as you go along. Looking at some of the other topics here that we've got, it's really pretty straightforward once you get in there. And once you've got your information about your contracts, I guess the biggest hang up that most folks have is going to this edit crops and production at the start, so they can go in and get their different enterprises set up. The other thing that you might run into is, for example, you might go in and do your crops and production, and you might estimate a low on your total production. You can always go back in and edit that value. So instead of 98,000 bushel, maybe we ended up with 100,500 bushel on those 2014 soybeans. So again, we can always go back in and edit that. That will update our crops and production, give us our total amount updated so we can sell those additional contracted bushels. The program doesn't allow you to set up contracts for more than what you've set up in this crops and production section. So if you get to the point where you've got more crop, or you've got more contracts than what you've set up acres for, or you set up bushels for, you'll have to go back to that crops and production, edit that, and add those in there. Again, that we talked a little bit about the filters on narrowing those down. If you need to go back in and change a contract, you can always select a contract and hit the edit button here at the bottom. That'll bring that contract back up, where you can enter in the adjusted information as needed there. If you forget to mark it as, forget to change the status, if you want to go back in and change that status, you can go in and do that by editing that contract. And you'll see now that one is now switched over and marked as delivered.